Welcome to Fostering Bridges, a podcast dedicated to uplifting, supporting, and empowering foster, adoptive, and kinship parents.
Today's episode, we have Matthew Rothrock talking to us about being a foster dad. Matt, thanks so much for joining today. If you can, before we get too much into the family dynamics and what all you've done, tell me a little bit about you and your family.
Yes, well, thanks for having me. My wife and I, have been married for a little over 15 years, and we have 5 children, 4 bio and 1 adopted, and we've been doing foster care for about 10 years, and we also have foster children in our home right now.
Currently, you have roughly how many total children in your household?
We have 10 right now.
10 children total. So
Yeah.
Tell me about those family dynamics and kind of age ranges. How's that working?
So the ages, we have 13, 2 12s, 11, 2 8s, 6, 5, 4, and 3. It's a lot going on right now. We typically, so we have our 5, and then we had 2 in care, and then we wound up with a sibling group of 3, supposed to be temporary. I think we probably all know what that means, and so it's we're seeing how that's going. We're getting ready to roll into the school year here and trying to get everything going and make sure we're prepared. It's a lot of swapping schools and enrollments and last minute stuff. So it's been, it's an interesting dynamic, needs and wants and just trying to fulfill those.
I can't help but laugh when I hear about the temporary situations. I remember a scenario we had where just for the weekend, that was once, and that lasted for 5 or 6 weeks. And another time where it was just for the night, and that lasted for 10 months. So those temporary ones always make me chuckle.
Yep.
10 kids, though. So I have 8 kids, and that's a lot. We have 10 in the household. But 10 kids. Now, in Oregon, for Oregon Child Welfare, they kind of have a cap, and that's over that cap. So how does that work if, for some reason, and I imagine for you it was the sibling group is what allowed you to go over that cap, but how did that work getting approved to go over the cap, and did you have to do anything special?
No, they really were in a tough situation with this sibling group, 13, 12, and 6. And they were in a home together. So, unfortunately, they've been in care pretty much their whole life. The oldest has had almost some opportunities to be adopted, and those fell through, and it's been one of those things. And now she's 13, her sister's 12, and then they have a 6-year-old brother, and it's been a long road for them as a family, and they're really trying to keep them together and the best they could. And they're already out of a school district, and so we're already doing a transfer from where we are to where they are, and the only other home for them would have been in a different county, and that wouldn't have been able to keep them in their school, which was important to them. And so they really wanted to try and keep them together in the county. So we're trying to make it work as long as we can. We don't know, we realize that for us, it's not an ideal situation either. It's not, you can't, the reason I think it's good that there's somewhat of a cap, especially when we're talking about children in care who have a lot of needs. It's hard to feel like you're giving sufficient care. So it's been a challenge. And as far as anything they did with any special work that they had to do, we didn't obviously request anything. They made it work. They knew it was not an ideal situation, and it was really rough at first. We have a 4-bedroom home. One of those bedrooms was an office, we had, uh, 5 children in 2 bedrooms. So three of them are in respite right now. We had to do like a short-term respite because they thought they had a transitional home for them to go to. They didn't. I wound up, my wife and I, we wound up with some help of some friends, spending last weekend basically getting rid of my home office, moving it temporarily to a location that a family member allowed us to, so I could still have that, but we needed that 3rd bedroom, because we knew they were going to come back when that other option fell through. So we got luckily some good friends who came and helped us spend Saturday getting a 3rd bedroom going. Now it's a little bit more manageable for the time being. Again, long term, it's not going to be the easiest situation, and we're trying to work with DHS to find another solution, but we don't know what that looks like, of course. But it's tough, and yeah, there is obviously we're over that cap, and that's not the first time, and I'm sure lots of us have been over those limits. Lots of children in care and not a lot of homes. So I think we've spent a good majority of our time doing foster care over those limits, at least for a period of time, even if it was just a week transition here or there, but it would be maybe a week with this group of kids, and then a few weeks later, a group of another sibling group for maybe a couple of weeks, and then always transitioning. So we've spent a lot of time above that line, and it's interesting.
I've always teased that those caps are not rules. They're guidelines and oftentimes just general recommendation. Because in our scenario, it just took staffing it with the supervisor, making sure there was a couple things in place, that we actually had some outlets and some breathers or respite, that sort of thing. And then it was done because the need is there. And You just mentioned the office getting redone in order to become a bedroom. I think a lot of people miss the logistical sacrifices that foster parents will frequently do. Again, in our case, the first time we were over the cap, and it was supposed to be for the weekend, they were going, a month into it, we thought, we don't know how long these girls are staying. So we actually had my wife's art room, we had the garage turned into a bedroom, and about 3 days before that was done, the girls moved out. we did this entire remodel that was targeted for them, then became an art room temporarily, and of course God eventually filled that with other children. So there's a lot of sacrifices.
Sure. And that came up when we talked about doing that the Thursday and the Friday before. We said, well, there's potential that come Monday there is another option opening up. We don't know, and still with us having set in, we thought, it doesn't hurt right now. We're in a place where my business, or my wife and I's side business, could take a little break. I think God, His timing is always perfect. Here we are in a little situation where we can make that move and not hurt us. So it worked out really well. And then even if they didn't come back, or there was a different situation, we could still use that extra bedroom to just give the kids some more space. Because I think, it's really, we can never forget like how taxing this is on, the other children in the home and our bios, and it's a lot, and it really is on them. And I think that was one of the biggest lessons I've learned over all these years, now that my children are 12 and 11, and being able to communicate those feelings, how much this does impact them. And that's a hard thing to deal with, and that we've had to come to deal with and work through. And we just pray that there's grace in that, in those decisions, and that we're trying to do the right thing. And it's but that's been a challenge in and of itself.
A few of the words that have come up here so far in this brief amount of time is tiring, it's hard, sacrifice, impactful. Given all of that, why do you do it? Why do you do it now? Why did you guys decide to be foster parents? And I'm curious, which one of you initiated it?
So my wife initiated it, and her mom was adopted, and she always felt like adoption was something she wanted to do. So it was actually adoption that started it, her desire for that. And at that time, we were a young family. We had our son and our daughter, and they were 2 and 1, 14 months apart. And we were interested in it as a possibility. We had some friends who had just adopted through doing foster care through DHS, and we thought, I knew it was something she was passionate about. It wasn't necessarily something that I felt strongly about one way or another. I didn't have any issues with it. It wasn't something I felt like I was called to necessarily, but she's my wife and she does, and I'm okay opening that door and supporting that. And so, of course, once you're in those classes, which are the same classes for those who may not know, as doing foster care, it's all one system. It was eye-opening, the problem that we have in this in society in general, but our community, for the needs for foster parents. And both and I, it didn't take long for her and I both to see the need and feel like that was something we needed to do. So that being said, we kind of went down that path and that journey and started to do foster care. And yeah, so our initial push into it was on the basis of adoption. We did it for about 4 years before any case ever got to that point. At that point, a case did get to that with a sibling group of, it was a sibling group of 3, but one of the children had a dad who was involved and got his son back. So it was 2 sisters that we still had. And so it was them that we were in the process, and we were in that process for a while, and it wound up falling through. The mom came back into the picture after being out of it for quite some time, and came back, and that was the first time we ever, after 4 years, where we decided we needed to take a little break. And so we did take a break for a couple years because we needed to. When we came back to it, we said, okay, we only want to do foster care. Where the adoption thing was heartbreaking at that point, and also at that point we had 2 more children, one more through the process while we were doing foster care, and then another one during our break. And when we came back, it was like, we just want to provide that need, that service. I don't think adoption was probably in the cards for us. I mean, who knows? It's not up to us, but just that's not where our heart was at that point anymore. We had 4 children. We didn't know what the future looked like, but we thought we just want to do care. Well, the very first group of boys or kids we got were 2 brothers, and they immediately went into like a long-term care and into adoption. And that was a very in that case, we had the boys for 2.5 years. The one we adopted, the little brother, severe abuse that he suffered at 30 days old when he was removed, then was in the system for a couple years. And his older brother also had, severe abuse, but had a lot of issues. And we worked, tried to get to a place where he was healthy. And we unfortunately, we weren't able to get there. And it was one of the hardest things we ever had to do, was we had to step back for the sake of his little brother and for the sake of our family. And we had to say, we can't adopt him without him getting help. And we had been trying to get him help, and the services that were available to him just weren't enough. And it was really sad. He was, able to, he's such a smart kid, and he could go through everything without raising any red flags. And for a while there, it felt like what we were saying really didn't matter, really didn't mean anything to anyone. We weren't being listened to. It was really tough because we saw so many issues, and we just could not seem to get anybody to take them seriously. And it was major safety concerns. And the biggest testament to this, because it was a very, very hard decision for him to leave our home, but the biggest testament to it being the right thing to do was within 2 weeks of him being out of the house, his little brother, who was 3 at that point, who didn't say more than 1 or 2 words, just started speaking, and there was this joy in him that we had never seen before, and started talking in sentences, and and he was just a new kid. And we kind of realized that trauma never really left him, that he dealt with as as an infant. He never really got away from that, because of the sustained trauma from his brother. And then my kids, really, really, really struggled with the things that were going on in the house. And it was it was a really, really tough 2.5 years. And the other side of this is this adoption, and how healthy he is now, and how much he's thriving. And we're only 6 months removed from this whole situation, currently. And but he's made leaps. He's he has just grown tremendously in this time. And that was our piece of, it was the right thing for him, definitely. And it was something that, as a father, I felt like I was having to make that decision for the safety of my entire family, because it wasn't safe. There was major issues when I would leave the home that wouldn't arise so much when I was at home. And the child was getting older, was getting stronger, and it was just not a good situation. So I know that question started out in one place and completely wound up in another. But it was a really, really tough situation. So now where we're at again through that is we're just, our home was already pretty full at that point now, 4 bios, 1 adopted child. And it was back to that philosophy of, we just really, really want to do foster care and help. We want to help parents when they get their kids back, to an extent, within reason of what we can do and what's safe for everybody. We really feel like there's such a need for those parents to have somebody in their corner when they're trying to walk away and turn their life away from the past, and they have to, they don't really have anybody sometimes at all. And so there's 2 boys that we have right now in care that we've had for a few months. We're trying to help their mom. We're trying to say, what can we do to help her be successful in getting these kids back? Because we feel like there's a disconnect in the system right there, where they're being told they have to walk away from this life, and they have to walk a new life, and they're trying to figure that out, and they don't have a lot of resources. And then obviously those people have to become self-sufficient and start figuring things out on their own. But I think sometimes there could be a little bit of help from the foster families, where we can try and do some of those, provide some support here and there, that's within reason. But I think that's kind of where we feel really called to right now, is trying to do foster care and then help see that process end successfully when they get to transition back. If that means we can give a little bit of our time through that process and try and slow things down for us. In theory, if kids are transitioning out of the home and things are slowing down a little bit for us in that regard, maybe we can do some occasional transportation or some respite to make sure things move successfully for that parent. So it's a kind of an evolving thing of where your heart is and where you see needs in the system and where you feel led to be. And I think if you're, as long as you're doing it for the love of the kids, then you're always going to want to, do whatever you can to help them be in the best situation possible. And when you know that a parent cares about them and you want to see them be successful and make that transition, that's, if we can fill a void there within, somewhat, and again, within reason. My wife is very passionate about this, and I'm always the guy who's like, well, okay, we gotta, I'm always trying to think things through a little bit more, and she's just saying, no, we got to do the right thing. And she's great like that. So I'm just trying to support that and follow that out, walking that relationship out. And I don't know what that looks like right now. This is kind of a new waters for us. So it's hard to say for sure, because things are just changing all the time with how we look at things and how we see the needs. But we're just trying to be where we're needed.
You guys have come full circle then, from starting out with the idea of adoption to now intentionally looking for opportunities to minister and love on the parents for reunification. And you mentioned in that heartbreaking story that there was a season where you felt like nobody was listening to you. And I'm assuming that when you say the people who weren't listening, that you're talking about child welfare, the courts, and so forth. And as things have changed for you guys, talk to me a little bit about what is it like to set boundaries with child welfare on what children you will or won't take into your house, when you say this child has to go, this isn't healthy anymore. What is it like interacting with child welfare on those issues?
We're still working on that, Dwayne. It's a tough thing. You have to, so communication with me and my wife is so important, that we're on the same page through being foster parents, whether it's the relationship with the children or your own children or DHS. And we have to be a team, and we have to be unified. And that becomes the challenge, is setting those boundaries. I know people whose rule is, because sometimes, this is probably not just unique to their situation, but not trying to generalize. But, where the wife says, you know what, my husband takes the calls from DHS because he's going to think it through a little bit more. He's not going to just act out of compassion, where I'm, going to more so. And my wife and I have definitely had that before, where that was like a rule. And that was earlier on. When we came back, having the two boys, that was the first time in a long time when we had those two boys where we didn't really have any other kids come and care. And granted, they were, maybe there was, the numbers weren't as good. That was during 2020, 2021. I know the numbers were down during that period. So because you didn't have kids in school, and maybe there just wasn't as many calls. So we didn't really have any dynamic where that had to change above having those two boys. So we didn't field a lot of calls on that. Here now we are on the other side of this. School's back in motion. Things are back in motion. Like we do for the most part. My wife has a heart for working with teens. She's always felt that she would like to. We have had a couple teens before, and she thought, I really have a heart for working with teens. And our kind of where we had been on that was, let's wait till our kids are older, potentially moved out. There's a lot that comes with teens. One of the last teens we had, there was a lot of safety issues. So we said we need to do that later. but she got a phone call for this group of 3 that was temporary, and a 13-year-old and a 12-year-old, and so it was a decision that got made, where we probably went outside of our boundary of where we usually would set that. And yeah, I think DHS, I think their philosophy is, well, it can't hurt to ask. And I understand you have so much and so many children, and so you're looking and asking, and and I'll be honest, I don't know that we said we had some. They did ask us after the adoption finalized, and do you guys want to keep your house open? We said yes. They said, what is your age range? And we gave them all that information with a new certifier and stuff. But, they called and we accepted. So it's been a learning lesson, and we've come to the conclusion, this is not right now for us. And so we're making the best of it as we go through it and work through it. But we do know that we need to go back and stick tougher to our boundaries. Honestly, the 2 boys we have right now, who are closer to the age range we wanted, but we're always concerned. We were a little concerned about our youngest, who we adopted, and how he would do with a boy in the age range of his brother coming in so soon after his brother left. We were just curious, and especially if the boy had any major behavioral issues or any kind of a violent, background. We were very concerned about him, and we tried it, and these boys were nothing like that, and they're just the sweetest 2 little boys you could ever have. And I felt strongly like God really, like, we needed this to remember what we're doing and why we're doing it, and it's always nice when you get those cases where you actually feel like you're making a difference, because sometimes you don't, and that's just the truth of it, right? Sometimes you feel like you can't reach a kid, you can't, their parents aren't gonna ever take them back. You're a transition, or maybe short term, or whatever, and you just want to try and at least plant some seeds of something greater for them to hold on to at some point in life, and that's really all I feel like I can do. But it's so it's tough.
I appreciate the idea of those boundaries beginning with communication between you and your wife, and how critical that is, that you 2 are on the same page and are able to talk through those things and make those decisions together. When it came to making boundaries for us, one of the things that we would do, because we had a set age, because they'd be sharing a bedroom, we said, well, this age and this gender, and we were specific on those things. And our certifier would call us, and we would respond, or I would respond with, feel free to call me on any of them. Our boundaries. And when he would call, I remember saying over and over, well, I really appreciate the call, and where we stand on this, what our boundaries are, but now I know how to pray for you. And the moment we hang up, I will pray for you that God will help you find the right home for these children. And that became a very go-to statement and phrase for me, because they have to do their due diligence. If there's an open home, they have to make that call. But at the same time, having had some of those challenges where we were, taxed a little bit too much, we were learning ourselves how to put those boundaries into place. But above all else, that communication with your spouse is key.
Yeah.
Any final words of wisdom that you would have for current foster dads or would-be foster dads?
We had talked about rewards, it being rewarding, and it certainly is rewarding if you're grounded in knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it. As a father, I would say as a foster dad, your family dynamic maybe is that you work, the dad works, and the mom stays home as a primary caregiver. That's our situation. My wife homeschools our children, stays home. And so she is dealing with, 10 kids, especially over summer. She's dealing with 10 kids all day long right now. And she, she shares the brunt of the hard work. And not only the hard work, if I, as a foster dad, if I tell somebody at my work that I have 10 kids in my home, I get a parade, or maybe not. They definitely think I'm crazy, but they might say, wow, yeah, you're a saint or something like that. Something very, whereas if my wife goes to the store with 10 children, she gets disparaging remarks such as, are those all yours? Do you know what birth control is? Do they all have the same dad? And talk down to it. And it's really, really sad. Whereas if I was to go be at the store with 10 kids, I would get looked at, differently, and it would be a different light, and it would be more praise. It would be, if I went to the store with 1 or 2 kids, you might hear, way to go, Dad. And it's like, it's kind of a sad thing that we've done where we don't expect much from dads. And I really, really hope that we remember to lift our wives up, and not that it's not hard work for everybody, but I know she does so much more than I have to do, not to mention the emotional aspect that she deals with, just the more hours with them, just the compassion she feels, and the hurt that she sits with and talks to, and when their child's crying about missing their parents, and I miss out on a lot of that by being gone. It's not that it doesn't happen at night when I'm home or whatever, and it does, but it's just challenging, and it's very, very rewarding as a dad, but almost to a point to where you're like, come on, I'm not anything special, because if you think I'm special, you should meet my wife, and I think that's, and obviously every family dynamic is different and how that rolls out, and those roles aren't always going that direction. Sometimes they're opposite of that, where the wife works, the dad's primarily at home. So I just know that it's a completely different dynamic for us, and how one is looked at versus the other, and it's an interesting societal stereotype, or however you want to look at that. But the other thing I would say, as far as advice for foster dads, meet them where they are. Be everything to all. Be all things to all people. Some kids come in, and another reason why, as a foster dad, sometimes things are easier. A lot of times, not always, but a lot of times you have an absent father situation. I think we know that. And these kids are going to attach way more to a father than they are to the mom. They're going to reject the mom because they have a mom in the picture, and they're going to cling to the father easier a lot of times. And so it's a, sometimes that dynamic, it's a great place to be when you can connect with them from that regard and give them a glimpse of something that they need. They have a void in their life, and to try and fill that void and be that void, that's very rewarding, and it's the best advice I can give in that regard is just be ready to be that person, be accountable to your actions, and be ready to be emotionally there too, not just the fun guy, or and that's needed. Don't get me wrong, that's all 100%. They need an all-encompassing father, and they need an idea of what our true father looks like, right? What our heavenly Father looks like. So we got to be prepared to walk into that.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Fostering Bridges. We hope today's conversation gave you new insights, encouragement, and a reminder that you're not alone on this journey. If you found value in this episode, please share it with someone who might need it, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an update. Remember, building bridges in our families, our communities, and ourselves is a continuous journey. Until next time, take care and keep fostering those bridges.